they both exist. They all play out in eternity. Source is infinite. It plays out all the potentials from this moment forward.
Yeah.
So that's why it's destined, because time is an illusion. It's all already happened. Your 5th birthday party is happening on another channel right now. You're just not tuned into it. Like your 95th birthday, assuming you're still here, is happening on another channel. You're just not tuned into it. And they all affect the now equally.
Yeah.
The past is affected by the future, and so you it's destined because it's already happened, but free will because you get to choose which version of the potentials you step into.
Today, I'd like to welcome Brandon Beachum to the show. Welcome, Brandon. It's such an honor to have you here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Looking forward to chatting it up here with you today.
Yes, I'm very excited. We just discovered a few overlaps prior to pressing record. So I'm really excited to get to those topics. But before we go there, I know that you're a podcast host, you're an author, and you've got several other things going on. So my first question for you is, could you tell us a little bit about your journey that led you to all of these amazing things that you've got going on today?
Sure. Well, it all started because my mother and father decided to have sex. And once upon I've never really even thought about that. I wanted to start with something unexpected, and then I freaked myself out by considering such a notion. No.
No worries.
I grew up on the East Coast. I currently reside in Los Angeles, Venice Beach area, as we discussed before we're turning on the mic. But I grew up in Virginia, on the East
Okay.
Coast. And I grew up in a very, kind of conservative Christian sort of household. And I went away to a Christian college, when in Tennessee. And that's really, that was just the first time stepping out of my house. And I ended up being one of the quote unquote bad kids, AKA normal, and getting kicked out of school. And so that led me to just moving to Nashville. And I met a woman there who claimed to have some psychic or intuitive ability. And that was something that really was a big moment in my life because I hadn't been exposed to that. I was, um, like I said, a very conservative Christian household. I was always like a serial entrepreneur. I started little businesses when I was like 11 years old and never stopped. And so, but that really was a big moment because she kind of demonstrated some things that seemed to validate her claims. Right. And then so I started reading, about metaphysical things and spirituality and books like Conversations with God. This is like, mid 90s. Um, and it was one of those things I can only think because it's been my dharmic path to, do. I've done about 2,300 episodes of the Positive Head podcast where I've gotten to talk to people like Neil Donald Walsh, who wrote Conversations with God, and many luminaries and scientists and philosophers and thought leaders. But I can only think because it was my dharmic path to do the work that I do, that I really, as I started exploring some of these other concepts about consciousness and the ultimate nature of reality, this sort of idea that we're one with the source consciousness that creates and animates all things, that I was just like, oh my gosh, of course, this is how it's structured. This is so simple, yet elegant, yet complex. Like, it just like resonated in every cell of my being. So, really, from that moment forward, it became it's one thing to sort of understand some of these concepts theoretically that I'm so passionate to talk about and wrote about in my book. And, it's one thing to understand these things theoretically, and it's another to practice them and, live them and apply them. As Mike Tyson says, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. So I think that life is like that oftentimes. And so that's been a lot of my journey is, first understanding, then applying some of these concepts to benefit my own life and, even teach best what I most need to learn on many, many episodes of the podcast over 9 years and through the book and things like that. So, yeah, along that journey, started many businesses, had one business go from me on my friend's couch to an Inc. fastest growing private company in the US. in 2015, and 100 plus employees. And so that in and of itself was a real journey in manifesting financial abundance and success that I was really trying to call in for many years prior. And of course, a lot of ups and downs, a whole hero's journey tale with that I actually share about in my book, which is called The Golden Key. Actually, and I'm also happy to share that book with all of you listening. I can tell you later in the show how you can actually get a free copy. But yeah, so lots of lessons, lots of synchronicity, lots of spiritual breadcrumbs, lots of learnings and teachings, and here we are, and that has culminated in me being on this show today, and that's a high level of what my journey's been about.
Right. Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. I know I have just tons of questions swirling around to ask you. And before we get into some of these really cool topics like manifestation, I want to just ask a little question. We don't have to spend too much time on it, but you mentioned that you grew up in Virginia. I imagine that was somewhere near the Bible Belt. You also mentioned you were Christian. And so I had somewhat of an experience like that, being raised in a Catholic environment. And then when I went to treatment, I was introduced to all this metaphysical stuff, and it resonated 100%, like just like you said.
Yeah.
I'm curious though, was there any kind of hesitation or fear or a deconstruction that had to take place for you as you started to explore and discover some of these metaphysical concepts?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's funny because I think of my brother, who's a couple years younger, very sensitive, and he had a lot of fear instilled in him with, because the sort of the type of Christianity is called Church of Christ, a non-denominational thing that's more prevalent in the South. It's very conservative and a lot of like kind of sort of hell and brimstone sort of like, yeah, everyone who's not Church of Christ is going to hell and half of them ain't going to make it sort of thing. So I think for my brother, that really impacted him and really scared him. For me, I've always been like very fiercely independent and kind of, gone to the beat of my own drum and thought my own thoughts. And so, yes, I was part of that world and it was what I was raised to believe. But as I got old enough to probably get mature enough to be scared, I was also questioning, like, some of these concepts, like, God is going to put you here and, give you all these confusing ideas that, like, how many different denominations and things are there? Like my church, Catholics, they're so off. Like, you're definitely going to hell. Like, right. And so there's so many branches and so many interpretations and so much like contradictory energy. And it's like, okay, that's the best you could do, God, is put me here, confuse the heck out of me. And then if I get it wrong, over 70 years, if I'm 80 years, if I'm lucky, you're going to torture me forever, but you love me. Like, well, it's like, I don't know. Maybe that's not a love I'm that interested in. It's like, I felt like as soon as I started, one of the things that I've always asked people who are really, kind of tied into that dogmatic view, I'm like, well, let me ask you something. Would you agree that we're a fraction of the love that God represents? And most everyone will say, yeah. I mean, we can't even fathom the love. Okay. Well, with the fraction of the love that you represent, and you have children, right? You're a fraction of the love now. Is there anything your children could do if you had the authority where you would torture them for eternity? No. Right? So what you're telling me is if I become infinitely more loving, then I'm into torturing my children as opposed to trying to correct or fix or rehab or whatever. And so, that's things like that started like, making me like, this isn't quite adding up. And then, throw in getting exposed to, someone who claimed these things were well outside of, what I'd been taught and seeing some evidence to support it. I was, cracked open enough to continue to explore. And then I started having a lot of like really, sort of magical, a lot of synchronicity stories and spiritual breadcrumb stories and spirit communication kind of stuff has happened to me that really helped to solidify a lot of my beliefs as well.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much for that. I know that right now, at least from my view and my experience and all the communities I'm a part of, it feels like there is a big wave of awakening to that concept that you just said. Like,
Yeah.
if God is so loving, why would he condemn me to hell? And that was
Hmm.
actually when I was a kid, I would ask my parents that question
Hmm.
and I would get in trouble for it.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, when I was, I mean, I was broken at a bottom. I went to treatment. So I was, just at that right space for an opening to occur. And as soon as I did, like you had experienced when I went into the metaphysical world, it just resonated so deeply
Yeah.
that I was like, there was some truth somewhere.
Yeah. Right.
And so and that also led me to being fascinated with manifestation. So I'm curious because there's so many different creators and different people who are teaching about the topic of manifestation, which was really broken open with The Secret a long, long time
Hmm.
ago. And
Hmm.
so I'm curious just to hear what you have to say about
Hmm.
manifestation. How do we manifest the life of our dreams?
Yeah. I think, I talk about this in detail in my book, sort of how I see it all coming together. I think it's a combination of things. I think you have, um, the way I kind of break it down is our life plays out at the corner of free will and destiny. And I believe that, time is an illusion. So you're floating in eternity right now. So for that matter, you talk about heaven or hell. You and I we're in eternity now. And science has proven that time is illusory, even Einstein, basically. You shoot me in outer space and bring me back a day later, I'm a day older, and you've been gone for 100 years or something. Right. And so if time is illusion, we're in eternity now. If I'm in a dark place and I'm feeling really dark and negative, I'm in hell. If you're feeling really ecstatic, you're in heaven, and we can be in the same physical standing next to each other, right? So it's a state, it's within, really. And so, as far as manifesting, I believe our life really plays out at the corner of free will and destiny, is that we're one with the source consciousness that creates and animates all things, an extension of that. And so we are the creator and created rolled into one. So I think it's sort of a dance with your higher self, this other part of yourself where there's things that are sort of pre-written into you as a potential, but then there's many timelines, right? So there's lots of potential Brandons from this moment forward having this conversation, but there's probably not one where I go and start, trying out as to be this next center of the Los Angeles Lakers. You know, it's very less likely than someone else, because of the particular trajectory of this avatar, this character, this
Yeah.
fragment, this fractal of source. And
Mhm.
so, I believe it's, within each of our journeys, there's all these potential realities. Like one of the first things that happened to me after I started opening up my mind to some of these concepts, I went on I was out randomly with a girlfriend, kind of an ex-girlfriend, and we were spending some time together again. And I decided, oh, here's a psychic. Like, I just had this experience. Let's try this out. And so I went, and this woman was, she's like, oh, very accurate. She was like, oh, this woman with you is going to try and get back together with you. And that was what was happening then. And, but you don't quite go for it. She goes, and I see you in a cold place like Chicago working in business. I was planning, this was in Atlanta, Georgia, where this reading was happening. I was planning to move to Chicago and work for my uncle in business after
Wow.
graduating college. This was in college. And so I was like, oh my gosh. And then she goes, my jaw kind of hit the floor with that. And then she goes, but there's this whole other path in music in California. Now, a year or so later, with the help of taking some magic mushrooms, I got really excited about the idea of creating, hey, I'm one with source, I can create anything, let me make music and start a band. And then I met someone from California and we came out to visit, and here we are 20 some years later. And so
Yeah.
she was seeing the potential Brandons in that moment forward, in that
Mhm.
moment, right? So that's what I think. If anyone intuitive ever says this is how it is, for sure, run, because it's potentials. And I think that's what she's tapping into, the subtlety of the potential me's in that moment. And they both exist. They all play out in eternity. Source is infinite. It plays out all the potentials from this moment forward.
Yeah.
So that's why it's destined, because time is an illusion. It's all already happened. Your 5th birthday party is happening on another channel right now. You're just not tuned into it. Like your 95th birthday, assuming you're still here, is happening on another channel. You're just not tuned into it. And they all affect the now equally. Yeah. The past is affected by the future, and so you know, it's destined because it's already happened, but free will because you get to choose which version of the potentials you step into with your vibrational offering, right?
Yeah.
So this is where, so which version do I want to experience from this moment forward? I want to experience the one that is the most rewarding, the most gratifying, the most successful, right? Well, however grandiose that may be, source is infinite. It has been there, done that, and gotten the t-shirt. It's all already happened. So you be it to see it. You get into vibrational alignment. Most people do something like work in order to have something like money, in order to be something like happy, but it actually works in the opposite. You be something like happy and you find yourself doing and having things that are a reflection of that, right? So this is how you navigate timelines and realities. So, for me, having my first success was, really tapping into this. I was down and out on my friend's couch, by some people's standards, early 30s. This is a loser. This is someone who's unsuccessful. But I wasn't buying that story. I wasn't telling that story. I was telling the story. It didn't over if I haven't won. It's, I'm continuing to learn from every misstep. And, there actually is no missteps, right? It's all happening for me, not to me. So once you start taking on that vantage point and understanding that there's so many successful versions of you from this moment forward, your only job becomes to manage your vibration by being it vibrationally in order to see it. And that's really what my life has been a lot about, and learning how to do. Like I said, everyone's got a plan till you get punched in the face. So, it's easy to fall sometimes into these stories of disempowerment and I'm not good enough, or shame, or any of that sort of stuff. And so that really becomes the dance, is learning how to manage your vibration regardless of what you're seeing externally, because what you're seeing externally is only a reflection of past vibrational offerings. In 3D on Earth, there's like a lag. If you're going to know what you're going to see tomorrow, look at what you're resonating with today. So quit looking at that for cues, and it becomes, and that's the most empowering thing, is it becomes an internal journey to create what you want. It's not about moving. There is no out there. Out there shows up as a reflection of your internal state. You're the lead actor, actress, star in your own private YOU universe. And so once you start to understand that and play with that concept conceptually, you start to see, results that reflect the power of navigating from that space. And of course, I think results speak the loudest, right? So
yeah, for sure. And I love how you explained that. It was like I could see it on a visual level, the different timelines. And I think you used the words, fate and destiny. And I am a life coach. I work with a lot of people, and a lot of the times my clients come to me and they ask me, like, how do I manifest? How do I manifest? How do I create? And one of my answers is that we're always actually creating, like we're always actually manifesting. And it's more a question of, are we consciously doing it or unconsciously doing it? So I'd love to dive in a little bit, because I know that the world is really struggling right now with a lot of different things, right? And the way I see it is that, the stuff that's going on in Palestine is, our external world reflects our internal world. And there's a lot of stuff going on with inflation and, the billionaires and, the people like the rest of us. And so I'd love to, dive in a little bit to the how-tos, if we could get really specific, on, someone that might be struggling financially to, pay their bills. And there's that stress and that fear of, getting the car repossessed or, internet shut off. It can be hard to really move into the vibration of someone who's in financial abundance. How would you guide someone in that direction? What would you have to say to that person?
Right. Yeah, it is. when you start to understand this idea that smooth seas never made for a skilled sailor, and you came to be a skilled sailor. So now, first, get rid of the story that challenging is bad, right? Judging because you're not there. Like, you can't know what you are unless you know what you are not. You don't dance to get to a certain place on the dance floor. You don't listen to a song to hear the final note. The whole thing is a part of your journey. You don't see a beautiful oak tree. I mean, a tree, a lot of people don't know, grows equally in both directions.
Mhm.
So that seed has to go where? Deep, dark dirt, you know, in the crap, the fertilizer, right? And so that a lot of times that's what's happening when you've had a hard journey. Congratulations, because that's shows that you are, you're paying some, you're getting buried in the soil for a reason. And so all that becomes your only job, like I said earlier, becomes managing your vibration. Understanding these things is so important because now you at least you're seeing it in the right context. You're seeing it for what it is. It's happening for you, not to you. And when you get that, you've really turned a corner,
Right.
right? When you understand, maybe I don't understand the why. It wasn't what I would choose from my human level consciousness, but
Right.
I know I'm doing a dance with my higher self, and I'm playing checkers, and my higher self is playing chess. So one of my keys, there's 8 keys in my book, The Golden Key, and one of them is trust the mystery. I started off with a quote by Chogyam Trungpa who says, "The bad news is you're falling through the air, falling through space. Nothing to hang on to, no parachute. The good news is there's no ground." And that's what your soul is doing. So you feel lost. You feel like, oh, I'm stressed about the bills. I'm stressed about, and guess what? You're in eternity now, and you've come to this moment. Certainly, you can remember back to your childhood or whatever, but really, you lived well beyond that. And here you are. Imagine eternity behind you, and you've somehow managed and made it and been able to deal with whatever arose. Right. And if
Yeah.
you love something, by the way, you should probably really appreciate it because it's going to go away. And if you don't like something, guess what? The good news is it's going to go away. Change is the only thing that's guaranteed.
Yes.
So it's guaranteed to change, and you've always made it. You've always figured it out. You've always, it's like you learn to step more into this trust, and the job becomes learning how um in think about the concept that the universe, source, higher self, God, whatever you want to call it, is setting you up for these challenges to see you walk the talk. And by the way, your soul signed a contract saying, I want it to be this way. I want these challenges because I want to have that hero's journey
Yeah.
experience of overcoming the challenge. Even in the face of all these things, I rose above and I chose my vibrational state and I chose to keep believing and chose to keep telling the story. And, I got to be a better sailor because of those harsh seas. And so I think that's the most important thing. Listening to something like this podcast out of, you could, this small little corner of the very vast internet and media vying for your attention. And here you are, you're a vibrational match for this message for a reason.
Mhm.
And so that which is like unto itself is drawn. It's water seeks its own level. So we're having this experience because we're enough of a vibrational match that we could actually attract each other into our experience and
Right.
everyone listening. And so that's something to be proud of because we've landed here, and everything that you've went through, you think you've went through a lot in this lifetime. You don't even have memory of what was beyond that to get you to this point. And it's not
Right.
it's not if but when you have the full success. So relax about it and
Yeah.
trust in it and start. Now you're showing up like a like a king or a queen, like I am regal, regardless of that. My external circumstances don't dictate my worth. My heart and soul and mind. And that's where it's at. And I'm getting the opportunity. It's easy to be, at ease when things are easy. But what about when they're not? You want to see what you're made of? That's when you'll know what you're made of. So, that's what we're all engaged in. And understanding that is of paramount importance if you're going to, because, you know, what you believe, you are the creator and created rolled into one. So abracadabra translates to I create as I speak. You're literally spelling when you speak. You're casting spells. Your words are your wands. So what are you manifesting? What are you believing? What story are you telling? What words are you casting around your scenario and your situation? And what I'm offering here in this little rant is here's the story that's going to serve you. And the universe is going to say, oh, that's how it is, little creator. Oh, abracadabra. Oh, as you say, you're creating it. If you say so, energy is neutral. Oh, it means that it's not about you. You're not good enough, and this is the end of you and your demise and shame. And it's actually a tool to make you really shine. Oh, why didn't you say so? Okay, let's start reflecting that. And that's really that's the path. And if once you're on that path, you win. You've won. You are a raging success. And the shortcut to really tapping into it, techniques, the quickest way to abundance is appreciating what you already have. It's the quickest way, right? I mean, right now, our ability to have this conversation, clear mind and health, we're not in pain, laid up. There's billionaires right now who would trade every penny for what you have.
Right.
And here we are like, oh, it's not enough. I'm not good enough. I should get more. I deserve better. Like, gratitude is the doorway to more.
Yeah.
And so you want to know how to get there. Start being grateful for the incredible amount of things you have to be grateful for, and watch that which is like unto itself is drawn. You're swimming in a vibrational pool of gratitude and gratefulness. The universe can only then, that's how law of attraction works. And law of emergence, creating the right law of emergence is a slightly different way of saying it's always there in potential. The acorn is always there in potential. If the little boy finds it on the shore and puts it on his shelf, it might not ever turn into an oak tree. But if he buries it in the soil with the right sunlight and the right water, creates the right conditions, it inevitably has to turn into that which its potential is. So this is creating the right conditions this is how you create the right conditions for you to turn into that oak tree, that butterfly, etc.
Yeah. Wow, that was really fun to hear and to listen to. And I was smiling and laughing a lot because I have a couple of questions for you around some things that came up as I was listening to you share the process. So first, I just want to share, I have agreed early in April, I agreed to run a marathon. And as this was happening, as I was getting asked, my answer was a no, because I've recovered from an eating disorder and I have run a marathon before, and that was a huge part of it. But all of a sudden, I got this inspirational yes that I couldn't say no to. And as I started the process, I was imagining like, oh yeah, 26.2 miles, like that's so long. And then I thought, wait, why do I believe that's so long? Well, because we all have just collectively agreed that is so long. And so I've been doing a lot of affirmational work. So I write some affirmations. And so part of that affirmation is, writing out that I run 2 marathons every year and that I have a healthy, happy body. And as I'm running, it's like that, what you were talking about like this instant, right? Everything has created, this moment that we're both resonating at. And so when I'm running, I, really embody that, like, oh, wow, I'm here. I'm a runner. I am a runner. I don't have to become anything because I'm already it. And so I'm curious, like, I could read between some of the lines that you were talking about, where our thoughts, like our beliefs, like play a huge part in what we create. And I'm curious what your perspective is on how to use our thoughts, or like you said, words were spelling. And the way I see it is that all of the words we say come from a thought first. And so I'm curious if you would go there for a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I think thoughts, it's really an interesting thing because they sort of, a lot of times we have these thoughts and we think they're us, and Eckhart Tolle talks about this in a very powerful way in his book, The Power of Now. It's like when he had a big breakthrough, he was suicidal, and he thought to himself, I can't live with myself anymore. And then he thought, he had the moment, hold on, who can't live with who? Well, I can't live with myself. Well, hold on, that implies two. So, and then it was like he had this profound spiritual moment of realizing, like, oh my gosh, I'm actually the real me. Your soul, your higher self is sitting in the background observing, the unmoved mover. It was there when you're 5, it'll be there when you're 105. It's the you observing it all. And the ego self, the human self, these thoughts are like clouds that come by. And what happens is a lot of times we attach onto them. Oh, I had this thought, and that's me. That's who I am. But who you really are is the observer behind the thought. And once you can create that separation, like, oh, that's a thought. I don't have to grab onto it. I don't have to own it. What if I just looked at it as a cloud passing by an infinite blue sky? And oh, that's interesting. And what he talked about is, a lot of times he talked in that book about our pain bodies would come up, this part of ourselves that, these awful thoughts or angry thoughts or whatever. And he's like, but then when he would observe it, it created separation. Yeah. This is just an energy that wants to be healed and that's coming up to be felt and seen and acknowledged, and it just observing it and then saying, now I let you go, sort of thing. It's like pulling the plug on the vacuum. It still may run for a minute. You may run out the script, but it eventually runs out of it. The energy dies because you're no longer subscribing to that is me, that thought. The true you is, infinite, and it is, the unmoved mover that is like, literally source. And it is, it's just like the rock of all rocks that is, pure enlightenment and bliss. And it's like, that is inside of you. And so tapping into that part of yourself and then becoming the eye of the storm, right? Doesn't mean things aren't going to happen and crazy things around the world and in your own life. And it just, you're no longer, you're in the world, but not of the world, right? You're no longer so identified with the thought or the event or the thing. And this is where you now have moved into more of a power position. You become like the eye of the storm. And so I think that's a big piece, is understanding these thoughts are packets of energy that are going across your infinite sky as clouds. You don't give them too much energy, too much power. You're more than that. You come from the infinite silence ultimately. God emerges from the void, some say, it's like, which is everything and nothing simultaneously. And that's like, that's your origins and what you're rooted in. And so, I think that's a big piece, is not getting too over identified, creating healthy separation from our thoughts. And then the less you're tied in with them, they can pass in a healthy way, as opposed to what a lot of us do is fixate and then amplify and then dwell. And then, it's like, what if you need nothing? You're unattached to it all in the most healthy way. And you're allowing life to, to flow, and just trusting that wherever it's taking you, whether it's something you would choose consciously or not, is happening for you, not to you. And there's going to be a gift in it. And if it's hard, there's going to be a gift in it. What is a lump of coal, a diamond, other than a lump of coal that held up to pressure really well? And so that becomes, or like Charles Bukowski said, all that matters is how gracefully we walk through the fire. So that becomes your job, not kicking and screaming, fighting what is, trying to swim upstream. That's exhausting, and you don't have to continue doing it. And having the right understanding and perspective about the nature of the situation in which you find yourself as a human really helps. It really helps to, and of course it's a daily conscious effort, and you have moments where you slip off the wagon and you fall into full, small-mindedness, but it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. That's your evolutionary process. So go easy on yourself. A lot of times people fall off and then they're like, oh, I'm such a loser and I messed up. And every moment is another chance to turn it all around. Like, you're born anew each moment,
Absolutely.
you know? And so I think that is really what the game becomes. It becomes the most important thing. And you can do it from where you're at. You don't need, people get so caught up in like, oh, my circumstances, I'm stuck, I'm locked in, I'm, you know, the job, whatever, you know, and which brings to mind, I'll share a real quick story. Then I'll
Mhm.
shut up. But I had a podcast guest years ago, Derek Rydall. He shared a wonderful story. He's very successful, you know, author, coach, teacher, you know. But he was an actor and he'd had hit a hard time and he needed to go wait tables and he was really ashamed. And next thing he knows, he's serving his peers in this restaurant. You know, they'd come in and he's now their server. And but then he had the realization: if I'm here, I must be here for a reason. And if I'm going to be here, I'm going to be the best server that I could be. I am going to bring the highest energy vibration. And he started just like crushing it, doing better than every other server. So much so, it started making like others look bad, and he ended up, they were like, he no longer became a match vibrationally for the job. They ended up asking him to leave. And then within a month, he was on a private jet being invited to speak at something, like just things opened up because he did what he could from where he was at with what he had. And he showed up fully and he knew his worth. Not, he wasn't defined by this. He allowed himself to define it and so, you know, show up in the highest, most integrous way he could. And that's what moves. I mean, the amount of miracles that can happen. You don't need to try and figure out how to get from A to Z. You need to figure out how to get your vibration to be a match of what Z is like. And that's it. That's not your job, because
Right.
there's so many ways that things can unfold that you would never think of. And so for me, that's been a big part of my own journey, is getting out of the way, trying to do. You know, my initials are BBB. I think the universe is, you know, likes to laugh at us, like, okay, Mr. Doer, you know, let's learn to BBB and stop doing, you know. And so, and a lot of us fall to the, you know, I got to move things around and make moves and blah 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 blah. And it's like, you know, like Osho said, you know, don't just do something, sit there.
Yeah.
And learning how to manage your vibration, making that the thing.
Yeah. So many good things in all of what you said, so many juicy topics. And I do want to highlight the everything happens for you.
Mm,
So, I did create hell, and I have gotten sober, I've recovered from my eating disorder, and so I have more heavenly moments now.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But in being an addict, in being full in addiction, victimhood is like such a thing, right? It's
Yeah,
everyone else's fault, poor
sure.
me, self-pity. And so
Mm-hmm.
one of the biggest shifts that, for me, even going through my daily life now, there's times where I feel like a victim to some circumstance. But whenever I make that shift to, oh, this is happening for me, it kicks off a series of questions like, well, why? What do I need to
Yeah,
see? What do I need
yeah,
to know? And it really
exactly.
does make a huge difference. And even just practicing with taking that shift can just open up so many doors. And when you talked about the higher self and Eckhart Tolle, the power of now, I want to share a little story that was really the opening for me to go to treatment for my eating disorder over 16 years ago.
Mm,
So I was almost dead and I was in bed, and my family was I was an adult, but my family was rotating, babysitting me
wow,
actually.
wow.
And my mom came in with a Gatorade,
Mm,
and she came into my room, and I just refused the Gatorade. I just was like, no, I'm not going to drink the Gatorade. And she was just trying to put something in my body so that I would continue to live for a couple more
yeah.
days until I got to treatment. But what was happening is that on the surface, I was terrified of 90 calories in that Gatorade because the
Mm,
eating disorder had taken over. But yet there was another voice that was asking me, why can't you just drink the Gatorade?
Yeah.
Like you've obsessed about nutrition, 90 calories is not going to put any weight on you. Why can't you just drink the Gatorade? And it was in that moment where
Mm,
I had these two conflicting thoughts. One was like, no way in hell am I going to drink the Gatorade. And the other one was like, just drink the Gatorade.
wow.
That's what really opened up the world for me. And then I discovered the power of doubt when I was in treatment.
Wow.
So
How
yeah,
cool.
it really, when we can find that space, I think is how Eckhart Tolle describes it. There's just a little bit of space, and all
Right.
that's needed is a tiny bit. And when we can get there, there's so much more available to us in
Yeah.
that moment that can really take us in whatever direction we want to go.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. It's yeah, it really is like yeah, that space and learning to just pay attention to the internal landscape more closely. Really,
Mm,
right? And otherwise you probably could have easily missed that. It becomes jumbled noise and and then but you're tuning in and really being more sensitive and
mhm.
you start to notice like hold on, there's other
Yeah.
pieces to this,
Yeah.
And
Well,
I think a
that
lot of times
moment that I had, I was a total miracle. I was completely unaware. I had no knowledge of spiritual principles or
yeah.
anything beyond what I was brought up with. I was very asleep, very unconscious. So that moment alone was just a miracle. But as I've gone through my
Mm,
journey, I reference back to like,
wow.
oh, I had that experience. Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
wow.
I can achieve it.
Well, I hope you drank the Gatorade. It,
I actually can't remember if I did, but I did go to
y-
treatment and here I
I
am
mean,
16 years later, healthy and
in
happy. And
some way you did drink the Gatorade. You drank the Kool-Aid.
I drink the Gatorade. Yeah. Uh, all right. So I'm curious now if there is anything else on this topic that wants to be shared
Hmm.
or revealed.
You know, I mean, I could talk forever, I'm sure. But I think that's really it is really driving home how empowered you are to
Mhm.
do the job. We all have very varying degrees of or varying paths in life, right? I didn't go through any sort of eating disorder or anything like that. But yet the thing that we have that's in common and all of us have in common is the same base level job, and that is learning to manage your vibration, realizing that is the thing.
Yeah.
Learning to manage your internal landscape in a way that is supportive of what you want to see next. Learning how to tell the right stories. And the good news is no matter what your job is, no matter where you're at in your life, no matter what your relationship status is, you can start that work now. You are. I mean, if you're listening to this, you're hearing these words, you're doing that work right now because all we're doing is creating a vibrational pool that we're all swimming in and feeling really good, by the way, right?
Yeah.
It's why, I love to do this very thing. It's like I am able to drum up a vibrational frequency that is a match of where I want to be and live
Mhm.
and stay. And so by us having this back and forth, we're swimming in that pool. So then the only job becomes how often can I stay in this pool?
Yeah.
And knowing that you're going to have moments of, ups and downs and falling off the wagon and getting down, and that's okay. That's a part of the dance. But you get more and more consistent and you find more and more techniques and tools and ways to stay here. And then it's like anything, you rewire your neural networks in your brain and it becomes your default to think in these ways and to look at life through this lens. And, within seconds of being put off by something like, hold on, why is this happening for me? Could there be a lesson? What would the lesson be if there was one here? Maybe I don't even see it yet. But I trust this
Yeah.
process. And that becomes just so powerful. Now you're really moving into the base level foundation of becoming a powerful conscious creator.
Mhm. Yes. Thank you so much. I know that Uh, like I have the busiest few weeks right now because my kids are ending school and we're moving into summer. And so there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of change. And, you know, the way that you phrase that, I never heard it before, but I'm going to say it again because it just felt so relaxing to hear that my only job is to manage my vibration.
That's it. That's it.
That's all.
My partner said she's really good at reminding me when she sees me getting into this state of do do do. She's like, "Remember, Brandon, you don't have to do anything. Like, and every time she convinces me to do the thing that's self-care, taking the
Mhm.
time for meditation, doing the thing that brings me joy and is showing that I I deserve a relaxed state, or the fun time when I could easily tell a story that you can't afford to, you got too much, whatever. Every time, then it's like, oh, what do you know? The day you took off and did something really nourishing to your soul, the email came that was better than 2 weeks of solid work, or the thing happened. So you start seeing it through that lens of,
Mhm.
you're tapping into your more divine self, that part of yourself that really understands, like, I am worthy, I will have what I need, and if I don't need it, I won't have it, and I don't need anything more than what I've got, and I'm grateful for that, and I'm going to continue to put myself in this relaxed state, not this state of fight or flight, and especially if the pressure's on,
Right.
is when it becomes important.
Yeah.
Like Osho again, he'd say, don't just do something, sit there. But he also said everyone should meditate at least 20 minutes a day, unless you're really busy. You should meditate for an hour, right? So it's that same idea, and you don't have to do anything. You have to get out of the way energetically of letting, you know, your higher self unveil what you need
Yeah.
and deserve.
Absolutely. And surrender, I'm just hearing surrender. And when you say get out of the way, it's like whenever I have been in those managing spaces where I'm trying to be the director and I'm trying to fit all the pieces and make sure this happens and make sure that doesn't happen, when I surrender, it just unfolds. And I've
Yeah.
said since I got sober that, I call source God. That's a whole conversation, a journey,
Mm-hmm.
getting back to being able to say God.
Mm-hmm.
But I always say that God's will for me is better than I could ever imagine. And I have a
Mm-hmm.
really good imagination.
Right.
So whatever I think is the path, there's something way better actually there for me.
Right. Right. Abraham Hicks talks about this. If you're familiar with Abraham, she
Mhm.
always says this or something better.
Yes.
So every time you're setting down the path, it doesn't mean there's not a time for action, and you're learning to read those cues and feel the energy and the subtle energies, and following the flow in a graceful way and taking action. Of course, there's plenty of times for that. And but with the help, and you can have your vision of what it is you think would be the ideal outcome with a healthy sense of detachment. It's the
Yes.
key. We get too caught up on this, it has to be this way, or all is lost. And it's like, you don't even fully know what's possible, or you haven't even maybe thought of the best path for you. But if you're
Right.
so attached to this other thing and fighting tooth and nail to create something that's really not even ideal, and so that becomes, you always, as the Rolling Stones that said, you don't get what you want, you get what you need. That's true. Like, you're going to always get what you need.
Yeah.
And so relax about that. Relax into that. That's a powerful place to navigate from. I really want this thing. I really want it to happen. And if not, it's because there's something even better for me that's
Yeah.
more aligned with the base level energies that I liked about that thing.
Yeah.
Right. And so you just constantly, it's never anything but on to the next win. And it
Mhm.
isn't over if you haven't won.
Right. What's that quote? Everything will be okay in the end. If it's not okay, it's not the end.
There you go. Right. Exactly. Exactly. I love that.
Yeah. Well, this has been so much fun. I have a couple of questions that I ask all my guests. So before we go there, everything we talked about, is all of that in your book?
Yes, which I'd love to offer as a free gift,
Okay.
um, to all of you listening and anyone you may want to share with. If you go to goldenkey.gift, the book is The Golden Key: Modern Alchemy to Unlock Infinite Abundance. So if you go to goldenkey.gift, and you use the code LOVE, LOVE, at checkout, you can get the audio and or ebook as a
Awesome.
gift.
I will include all of that information in the description of the show. So if you missed it or didn't write it down or didn't type it in, it's okay. You can click the links in the description.
Excellent. Thank you.
So the first question that I ask all my guests is, how do you define God or
Mm,
source?
mm. You. I define God as, um I love the there's some great nuggets in the Bible, by the way. We talked about Christianity early on, but
Mhm.
um, one of the great quotes in the Bible is, God supposedly saying, "I am that I am." And if you break that down, it's like into, I am that. So I am what? I'm that. I am what else? I'm that. I'm that. Never mind. I just am, consciousness is. And so I define God as anything you can think of and everything you can't. It is the force that animates all things. It is pure consciousness and intelligence that is infinite and eternal, and there's nothing that can be separate from it, right? So everything you see is God.
Thank you. The next question is how or what would you say is the purpose of life?
Hmm. That's funny because I asked that question as well. Um, the purpose of life is to give life purpose, and nothing matters. Everything counts. So you're you're literally, it's a canvas that you're getting the opportunity to experience. God wanted to know herself. It wanted to know what it meant to create and
Mhm.
experience and choose and contrast. And so you're God guiding. And so the purpose of life is for God to have meaning. And you are that meaning. You're the one that is, it's like two sides of the same coin, you know, and you are as necessary for God to know itself as we think of God for us to exist, right? It's a divine dichotomy, two apparently contradictory things that both hold true. Like you and I are separate. That's true. You and I are
Mhm.
one. That's true, depending
Yeah.
on the vantage point from which we're speaking. And that's what's happening with everything. And so, yeah, the meaning of life is to give life meaning.
I love that. I haven't heard that before. Thank you. And the final question is if you could take one piece of wisdom that you have now and offer it to a younger version of yourself, any
Mm,
younger version of yourself, what would
mm.
that one piece of wisdom be?
That's great because this is also you're prompting with, if someone ever asked me what's the last thing you'd leave someone with, it's basically the same thing. And it's really, in this day and age of social media and numbers and likes and followers and, people presenting their highlight moments only. And, it's really easy for people to feel discouraged. Like, oh, I didn't become a billionaire by 23. Like I'm a loser or whatever story. And it's
Yeah.
like, um, once you can shift this idea that there is no, you are completely unique, just like everybody else. That's where the exact same in your uniqueness. And you have your own unique trajectory, and you'll get exactly what you need. I saw it said recently, and I loved it. It's like if a man needs money to evolve his soul, he won't be able to avoid it. If a man needs the lack of money in order to optimally evolve his soul, he won't be able to get it. Right. And so you're getting exactly what you need to become the next greatest and greatest version of yourself. And there has never been a soul more worthy in all of eternity than you, because it's all an extension of you. If anything's been worthy, anyone's been worthy, you are it. You are that. I am that I am. I am. That's you. So of course you're going to make it. You're the lead actor director in your own private YOU universe. And so it's not if, but when. And so this is part of it, remembering and empowering yourself with these truths. And instead of seeing the person on social media that you admire and creating separation and, oh, I could never look like that, or, sound like that, or whatever. Instead, oh, wow, out of the infinite things that could be vying for my precious attention, this is in my face because it's such a close vibrational match that I'm calling it in. Wow. It's like, here it is, whatever, either of us are saying in this podcast. Wow, that you're a match for me, or you wouldn't hear me. You couldn't even find this. And
Yes.
so, it's like understanding, it's not quit creating separation with your perspectives and start creating unity and making it all a part of yourself and remembering the truth, remembering, coming back together with the truth of the matter. No one has been more worthy in all of eternity than you are.
Thank you so much for that. That was beautiful. And, you know, you're so right. In all the social media, it's so easy to compare and put ourselves in the one down rather than, you know, equal or even one up.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is too. A lot of people are, you know, putting them in the up position and looking down on people. And like the truth is we all are one. We're all
That's
equal.
right.
And we couldn't even be exposed to something if we weren't an exact vibrational match.
That's right.
So,
That's right.
thank you so much. This has been such a fun conversation. I could talk for hours with you. Honestly, I'm like, we're just getting started here, but we'll close to keep the episode to close to an hour-ish, whatever time it's been so far. But it has been such a pleasure. I'll include all the links, your website, the link to your book, anything else you want to include in the description of this show. And yeah, I'm just honored and so blessed and so appreciative of being able to spend this time with you. Thank you so much, Brandon.
Likewise, it's been such an honor, and thank you for having me on, and thank all of you out there for tuning in your beautiful brainwaves and incredible hearts to this episode. It's been a true pleasure.
I would like to personally thank you for tuning in to this episode. If you haven't already, please be sure to like this episode, subscribe to my channel, and turn on notifications so that you never miss a beat. And if you really resonated with this content, please share it with all of your friends so that collectively we can expand our consciousness. Have a very blessed week.